The mark of the beast. I hope you loved my epic little cutesy way of introducing the mark of the beast. Why am I bringing this up? Because I have I think, unique perspective of what the mark of the beast is. I think it's more of a database tracking system in the brain and in the hands versus a literal, hey, give me that sheet of paper, let me sign up for this damage. So if you think about our frontal lobe, which is where the mark is supposed to go, well, one of the two locations, the front of the forehead and the hand. So our forehead, which I know you must have a big old forehead, controls, let's see here, reward, attention, short-term memory, planning, and motivation. And it happens to be the biggest part of the frontal lobe of our brain. And so I think it's a tracking system because God is obviously super intelligent. And what better way to track over the length of your life what you find to be rewarding, motivating, pleasurable, essentially what controls your decision-making capabilities all in one swoop, more than the frontal lobe. And that's, I think because God is not a cruel God, he looks at your life as a whole, not your last 5 minutes, and what you find to be enjoyable and what you just don't want him involved in, which could be your entire life. And so if you think about, there's so many different ways to go about this here, but let me use an example from my 20s. Sure, I was in a few long-term relationships and they were enjoyable, but ultimately not for me. And so in between there, I was, this single person that every man suggests you should be, including my family members, right? Like, go, take him down. And I didn't realize how that's not very fulfilling, not gratifying, not even useful to me, especially for my goals, for what God has in store for me. And so, but I did it, and I had that experience, and I realized that's not, enjoyable. I followed somebody else's mold of what a man is supposed to be. And, there's some men that pursue that into their 50s, 60s, 70s. Be like, yeah, I'm the old dude in the nightclub with a cowboy hat trying to pick up these girls, y'all. Over there looking like a pimp. And so that long-term view of things makes grooves. Like if you study this stuff, it makes valleys in your brain, especially your frontal lobe, because it creates these dopamine receptors that this is rewarding, this is your life, and nobody should take that away from you. So essentially, the consent of your will, your spirit, your brain gets dominated into these little grooves, these little valleys, and the more you dig into that in your brain, the more you will not want to step away from it, which is, a contrast to God's design for things. If I had continued that, it would be essentially saying, hey, I know, God, you wanted just one man, one woman in Genesis, and, dating is antithetical to that, but I'm going to do it anyways, because I think I know better. And, there's black and white perspectives of like, follow God or you'll go to hell. But I think there's gray area that nobody really talks about. And that's this. Let's go back to my example. I have somebody that made a model for me, probably a model for a lot of men right now, a lot of boys, these pretend so-called alpha males that are full of crap. And they get told to go just knock out all these women into sex, right? Or not knock them down, and do whatever it takes. Lie to them, cheat, steal, become a millionaire at whatever cost, and just get as much sex as you can. Even though, if you're real with yourself, if you're in that perspective, every day is just torture. It's like, when I was in dating, probably the most annoying thing for me was, man, I can't keep track of all this stuff. I got all these businesses, my job. I was repeating stories to these women, and I didn't have it in me to lie, saying like, oh, you're the one for me, I'm gonna marry you, like a lot of guys do, to get in their pants. Like old homeboy Drake, he's very open about that. But I gotta rebuke even calling him homeboy, because it's just so sad. All these sad lyrics of like, yeah, I'm gonna lie to you and put poison in myself by lying to you, and let's celebrate that in song and dance. And but the gray area there is that somebody else drove that perspective into me, into my childhood, and I played along with it. There's so many other things in our childhood that get drove into us, and we just kind of repeat it as a behavior into our adulthood. Or it could be even more sinister than that, where we say we'll run away from it and never be like our parents, but then it pops up like something else, like another addiction or another way to harm people, be it drugs, smoking, manipulation. Like, you can be addicted to a lot of different stuff. And what's the number one way to find if you have an addiction? Try to give up that behavior for one day. You'll learn real quick. And so that's the gray area, where I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and he said, when you have people that grew up with this sort of behavior that God clearly does not like, will he be that cruel to just say, you're going to hell because you're doing that? Or will he look at the whole person and see, oh, that behavior was instilled, or in Spanish we call inculcando, like instilling that behavior at such a young early age, to where even grocery stores, the candy aisle is intentionally targeted towards children. They're like eye level to toddlers because they want them for life, right? McDonald's targets children because they want them for life. Same with a lot of different stuff. The enemy wants you for life, and he'll start as early as he can, so it becomes unnatural that you don't want that behavior. So it's critical to understand this stuff and the gray area of it all. And to wrap up with one last example, I was on Reddit. There was this woman in a Christian thread that said she was a transgender woman, and she said, I got banished from the last church I was in, and I'm at a new church and they seem to be cool, but I don't know, does God love me? And I responded, of course God loves you. Many other people responded, God loves you, thankfully. And then added to it with the question of like, first of all, did you come to know Christ before or after the transition? Let's set the whole activity of the transition to the side here for a second, especially because you can't really undo that from my understanding, or maybe it's super difficult to undo that. But if we set that to the side, what determined, I asked her, what determined that decision for you? And because of that, the question because of that is that I want to get to, similar to me, what controlled the behavior to get there? For me, I happen to be dating multiple women, probably breaking all sorts of hearts, dating with no clear end result. Most women do want to get married, and so I'm kind of playing with their hearts, breaking their hearts. Or I was afraid to be alone in some relationships, so I just stuck around in it for a long time. Like, where did that start? Most of it in my childhood. I was afraid of being alone, they followed the advice of random supposed alpha males, but they just had a toxic view of what they grew up with. They had no real example. And sorry to say, but the Bible doesn't have that great examples either. There's a lot of broken people. And Jesus, because he had very limited time here, we only have so much view into what a real man is in his view, in his life. But you have to really scour the Bible to get the pieces to the equation. He explained it on a root cause. It's on us to have the hunger to go further. And that brings us back to the brain. Do we have a hunger for God? Do we have that as a reward and motivation system? Do we just look at him like a guy with a thunderbolt waiting to just throw it down at us in our face? And that largely could be a view of our own father or mother, or both. Is that a skewed perspective from my childhood or even adulthood? And, I'm going to make more videos on this stuff, but I think just use this video as a thought experiment to be like, oh, God's going to see my whole life. Am I really, first of all, loving God and having real conversations with him about everything going on? And maybe I don't want to give this up right now. Let me indulge the darkness a little bit longer. And, that's going to have a cost to you. Just like it had a cost for me, thinking that I knew God's design better with a alpha male example. But yeah, it didn't end up so hot. But God gives us free agency, and he would rather have the conversation versus you just kind of being detoured and detached from him. We are his children ultimately, and he wakes up singing over us no matter what we did the previous night. But we have to want him, right? You know what I think is hell? I think it's the progression of the earth. I don't think it's you just automatically get thrown in a lake of fire right as you close your eyes and you die. I think he just lets the earth do what the earth wants to do, the world. Imagine what we're seeing today in this day and age of cruelty. Imagine it 100 years from now. There will likely be no nonprofits like Red Cross or other societal improving organizations, for-profits, nonprofits. They just won't exist. You're complaining about customer service now? I mean, just think about relationships or friendships being out in public in existence today. The customer service, the lack of empathy is laughable. And that's going to continue getting worse. People are going to care less about the planet. Guess what the sun beams down on us? It's a lot of heat. So the coldness of hearts will make us destroy the world, and that'll reduce all sorts of different improvements to the world that we've done over the years. And it's not necessarily just one party, by the way. What's the thing about what's going on with the Republican Party right now that people may not see foresight-wise? It's going to cause a rupturing into the left, the Democratic side. Then the Democrats are going to continue doing what they do, which is free for all, do whatever you want at the cost of your body, with no values, no system in place. And sure, there are some moderate Democrats, but again, we do have a Christian country, and to just have no guardrails, now we're creating another danger for our country. So when we get on either side of the political spectrum, the enemy loves it. And so this situation we're going through right now is setting up for another, I think, pendulum swing in the opposite direction. And then it's going to progressively get worse on the opposite direction. And so it's on us to really be moderate and look at Jesus, not look at one party as your deliverer. And keep that frontal lobe, keep your hands in check every day, because that database, you want to keep a track of it. It's talking like Mario over here. Keep a track of it. Let's go. All right. Catch you later.